Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Miguel back again with another video, and today I have the Vivo V30e 5G in my hands, and this is a mid-range phone, but there is one thing that I didn't like about this phone, which I'll talk about. Apart from that, this phone pretty much ticks every single box, and the reason why I kind of don't like this phone is something that can either be a deal breaker, or you can either ignore it and then just, kind of make up for the other good things that this has. So I'll go ahead and talk about that in a little bit. So we have 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of internal storage. The color that we have today is sort of like the brown color. It's a very unique color and something that I really liked when I saw it for the first time. We have the phone here up front, which I'll put on the side. Down here we have the warranty information. We also have the silicone case, some key instructions, and we also have a 44-watt charger that comes out of the box, and last but not least, the USB-A to USB-C cable. Oh yeah, we also have the SIM tray, the SIM pin right over there. Okay, now looking at the phone, I'm gonna try not to break this. Ooh. Okay, there we go. Now looking at the phone, this comes in the brown color. That's all it says on the box. It's just a brown, but it kind of has some of a little bit of a maroonish or kind of like a burgundy hue to it. And I like the way that it feels in the hands because it has a curved back and a curved front as well. So this is a glass back, which is pretty good to see. The front is also glass, and this is actually protected by Scott Sensation, something that I heard for the first time, but when I looked into it, this is a company that's owned by the Carl Zeiss Foundation. It's based out of Germany. So you are getting some sort of protection here. It's not just gimmicky. If you look at the design, you have your camera set up on the back, and this has a dual camera setup with the main 50 megapixel camera. You also have this kind of aura or kind of like round LED light, and that's what they actually call it, the aura light or the aura LED. And this, once again, this is a very familiar design to what we've seen on the Canon phones, which have sort of like that expensive watch bezel on the back. On the Canon phones, it was used for heat dissipation. I don't know the purpose of this on it. I think it's just for design, and I don't really know how heat dissipation works on that phone. But apart from that, this is a pretty lightweight and thin phone as well. I just like the way that it feels in the hands. It's a pretty good feeling phone, and if you want to buy a phone for the looks of it, sort of like a designer phone, then this is pretty much it, because this is a very attractive phone in my opinion. Down here you have a stereo speaker, you also have your USB-C port, you have your SIM tray, which will support 2 SIMs. It will not support 2 SIMs plus an external memory card, but you can swap it with 1 memory card and 1 SIM, so you do have that option as well. And on the top you have one looks like a little bit of a microphone or a noise cancellation microphone on top. Part of the back is a little bit of matte finish, and then part of it on this side is kind of like a different shiny finish. So I like that you have 2 textures on the back. That's something that you don't see a lot, but I just like the way that it feels. Looking at the display, you have a 6.7-inch AMOLED display, which has a 120 Hz fast refresh rate. You have a 1300 nits of peak brightness display, which is pretty good and can pretty much work in any sort of brightness. And this also has a full HD 1080p resolution, so that's the maximum that it will go to. And then looking at the obvious mid-range specs, then that's pretty much something that you can expect. Now, when you look at the performance, this comes with Snapdragon 6 Gen 1 chipset. And when you hear Snapdragon, you automatically will assume, or a lot of people will think that this is a pretty good chipset. But this is kind of like those chipsets that are not really at the top. I mean, it is a Snapdragon chipset, but it's not the best performing Snapdragon chipset. And that's the main problem that I had with this phone, and this either can be a deal breaker for you, or it's something that you can totally ignore if you're not gonna be a power user, or if you're not really keen on playing heavy games on this. I did see a little bit of a problem when also playing PUBG, so I should mention that if you want this to play PUBG, there's a possibility that you may see a little bit of a lag, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. On Antutu V10, it gave us 557,000 points, so it's not too bad. But out of a Snapdragon chipset, I kind of didn't expect it to be so low. If we compare this to MediaTek, then this is very similar to the Helio G99 chipset, which also is very similar, gives us around 400 to nearly 500,000 points. So it's very similar to this, and that chip is also not a performance or a gaming chip. Nevertheless, this is not going to slow you down if you just use it as an everyday phone. So because this does tick pretty much every single box. So if you can leave that one thing out, or if you can kind of ignore that, then this is probably a phone that you should consider buying. This has a main 50 megapixel camera that's on the back, and I believe this has a Sony IMX sensor, if I'm not wrong. You also have an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which has 120-degree field of view. That's pretty useless in my opinion. The 50 megapixel main camera is actually pretty good. It has pretty decent imaging, it has pretty decent bokeh effects, and pretty good lighting. Now the front camera is also a 50 megapixel camera, but the thing about the front camera is that if you're in India, then you're going to get the front 50 megapixel camera that also has autofocus. If you are in Malaysia, then you're only going to get the 32 megapixel front camera. So depending on where you are, you're either going to get it or you're either not going to get it. So I'm not sure on other regions what you get, but Malaysia and India, I specifically know about these two, that if you're in India, you'll get the 50 megapixel. If you're in Malaysia, you'll get the 32 megapixel camera that does not have autofocus. What I have here is the 32 megapixel front camera. So I have the Malaysian variant in my hands today, and I think that's just the way that it works over here. But that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're buying the phone. You can maybe try and get it for the Indian variant if you are lucky. And that's another thing that you want to consider when you're buying this phone. You do get the option of shooting in 1080p and 4K resolution as well if you want to. If we talk about the battery, then that's a pretty plus point over here, because this has a 5,500 milliampere battery, and this was able to give us around 15 hours of output when it comes to generic use. And that's pretty good, because on other phones that we had for 5,000 milliamperes, we got 13 and a half hours as a maximum. But 15 hours is really pushing it, and that's because of the 5,500 milliampere battery that comes in this. And it's pretty impressive because this is a pretty lightweight and thin phone. So having said that, I think it's a really good thing. And I think a lot of other phones should also, or a lot of other manufacturers should also start doing that. And I think they can, but they're just limiting it. And then you also have the 44-watt charger that comes out of the box, so you are getting some sort of fast charging as well. And you also have a wireless charging on this one. Price-wise, this will cost you around 1,300 dirhams. That depends on where you can get it from. I think this version, the one that I have, is around 1,300 to 1,400 dirhams, depending on the variant and the specs. But I think in India, you're going to get it for around 27 to 28,000 Indian rupees. And that, I think, converts to nearly 1,300 dirhams, if I'm not wrong. Those are the prices that I've been seeing. But I think for that price point, this is a phone that pretty much does everything. It's not a phone that's gonna break your bank, so it is still sort of like a budget phone where you're not spending more than 1,500 dirhams. And I think that's a pretty good price range for a phone that will do a lot of things and pretty much everything that you wanted. And as I said, performance-wise, it's not gonna slow you down, so you're not gonna see it every day using it. But if you are gonna play games, then there's a possibility that you may see a little bit of a lag there. Apart from that, this is a pretty good all-rounder phone in my opinion. This was just a quick first look and a first impression of the Vivo V30e 5G. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.